This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Gunfire rocks Somalia's capital as military seals roads to prevent protests over election delay. Experts blame climate change for extreme weather across the U.S. as food, fuel and water shortages continue in Texas. And security agencies in Nigeria begin operation to rescue 27 students who were kidnapped in Niger State. This is Africa Live. A warm welcome to the show. I am Peninah Karibe, also lined up this hour. Lawyers in Ghana want public servants that willfully cause financial loss to taxpayers punished. In sports, Uganda's games at the ongoing 2021 FIBA Afrobasket qualifiers postponed due to positive COVID-19 tests in their delegations. We begin the hour in Somalia, where calm is returning after an anti-government rally in Mogadishu. Gunfire erupted in the Somali capital early Friday, with protesters running for cover. Military vehicles were later seen sealing off the area. This comes a day after opposition leaders called for new elections and days after a car bombing near the presidential palace killed at least one person. Violence in the country has escalated in recent weeks as Al-Qaeda-linked insurgents step up attacks. Our correspondent Abdulaziz Bilo joins us via Skype now from Mogadishu. Abdul, what's the latest from there?
Well, Peninah, things are back to normal right now. A few minutes ago, there was a sporadic gunfire around the airport area, that is the green zone area. And there was a protest actually at around 10:30 a.m. Somali time. The protest was being led by key opposition figures, including the former Somali Prime Minister, Algeria, a staunch critic of President Farmajo, whose name is Abdurrahman Abdushakur, alongside other members of parliament who are anti-government. And also, there were also a few demonstrators also with them. The demonstration was taking place at the green zone area that leads towards the Mogadishu International Airport. Security forces did open fire and disperse the protesters, including the former government official like Prime Minister Hassan Al-Khairi, and all of the others ran for cover. There was a video that was circulating on social media showing at that exact moment when the gunfire erupted. And during that gunfire, a few rocket-propelled grenades, RPG rifles, did manage to strike a restaurant that is inside the heavily fortified Mogadishu airport compound. There's been some destruction there according to the pictures we've seen, but there's official and no communication yet from the Somali government or from the African Union force inside the Mogadishu airport. But the UN has called on Somali leaders to open a line of communication so that the conflict that's taking place here in the capital can come to an end. And also last night there was also clashes between government forces and forces loyal to key opposition figures around the presidential palace area, where two opposition leaders planned to launch a massive gathering at the place called the Jirka Dason to pressure the government to conduct elections and to pressure President Farmajo to strike a deal with regional and federal leaders. So the protest did take place at the airport, but it did not take place at the initial area where they planned yesterday.
And Abdul, have those calls for protests affected the planned meetings for talks on elections?
Well, according to the Office of the Somali President, there was a meeting that was due to take place from the 18th to the 19th of December. That was yesterday and today, but only two regional leaders managed to arrive here in the capital, Mogadishu, alongside the other federal leaders. So the rest are still in their respective regions, and it's not clear whether they will be arriving today or tomorrow. So there's also the opposition. They're also urging the other regional leaders not to come to Mogadishu, citing security concerns, so that the meeting should not take place in Mogadishu. But the Office of the President did call on regional leaders to come to the capital to strike a deal and end the electoral stalemate, because elections were due to take place since last year, but they've been delayed time and time again. And the militant group Al-Shabaab has taken advantage of these delays, it has launched deadly attacks, including a car bomb recently at a security checkpoint leading to the airport. There are also a number of mortar shells targeting the Somali senior leadership who are meeting in central Somalia to discuss the electoral stalemate. So the opposition, on the other hand, they want the current president of Somalia, Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo, to declare that he's just a candidate and he should just hand over the presidency to a transitional national authority that will be headed by the Speaker of the Senate and Parliament. But there's a law here in Somalia saying that the current office holders will remain in office until new occupants are elected. And until that happens, the government is of the view that that will not change. But for now, things have settled. There's sporadic gunfire a few minutes ago, but things have cooled now. Right now, the authorities are saying everything is under control.
All right, Abdul, thank you for that update. Abdulaziz Bello joining us via Skype from Mogadishu. Ugandan police are investigating the death of 6 children killed in a grenade explosion at a refugee settlement in northern Uganda. Police say 5 others were severely injured in the blast. Michael Baleke tells us more.
Ugandan police say the children were playing with the object and later tried to cut it with a machete when it exploded. 3 children died on spot, while the other 3 died in hospital. The police believe the bomb could have been left behind during the Lord's Resistance Army War that took place in the early 90s. The Maji 11 refugee settlement in Ajumani district hosts about 17,000 refugees from neighboring South Sudan. Police say the region is not yet free of unexploded devices. Grenade explosions have been frequent. A few weeks ago, another explosion killed 2 people in the same district. Thousands of people died in the 20-year LRA insurgency in northern Uganda, and hundreds were abducted. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Security agencies in Nigeria have begun an operation to rescue 27 students who were abducted at a school in the north-central Niger state. The country's police chief, Mohammed Adamu, said special units were deployed to the area to go after the bandits and rescue the students. Niger State Governor Abubakar Sani Bello has since ordered all boarding schools in the state to shut. This comes as anger continues to mount over insecurity in the country. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Senate has condemned the incident. The Senate also called on President Muhammadu Buhari to declare a state of emergency due to the continuing insecurity. The incident comes less than 3 months since a similar attack happened in Katsina. Let's go to Lagos now. For more on this, we have our reporter Deji Badmas live for us. Deji, what more do we know about the fate of the kidnapped students and teachers?
Now, Peninah, the way to explain this is twofold. You have the official account and the unofficial account. So let's begin with the official account. The official account is what you have been reporting. The Inspector General of Police and the National Security Advisors both coming out to say that special units of the police, at least 5 units of the police now, have been deployed to that area to comb the entire forest and try to locate the bandits and rescue the students. Now, that operation is actually underway. There's been nothing yet from the security agencies, and the state government hasn't said anything yet. Now, let's go to the unofficial account. Now, there's this respected Islamic cleric in the north of the country who has actually been touring some of the forests where these bandits are hibernating and meeting with the leaders of the bandits, you know, trying to negotiate with them to stop the kidnappings and stop the violence. And these bandits, for some days now, has been asking the federal government to open an amnesty program, grant amnesty to these bandits, dialogue with them that the bandits were willing to lay down their arms if they were granted amnesty. Now, the information we're getting from sources is that this respected cleric has now met with the bandits who carried out these kidnappings, and that he's spoken with them, and they've given him the assurance that the students will be released. In fact, what we're getting at this very moment is that it's still unconfirmed, is that the students have been released to the bandits, and that they're probably somewhere going through a medical checkup at the moment. But as I said, it's not been confirmed. But we do know for sure that this respected Islamic cleric actually has been meeting with the leadership of bandits across the north of the country. And he was actually in Niger State, and it's been confirmed that he actually met with the leadership of the bandits who carried out this kidnappings. But we just have to wait until probably much later in the day. Nothing has been confirmed yet officially, but unofficially, that's what we're learning, Peninah. So I think we're in for some kind of dramatic development before the end of today. Yeah.
Okay, Deji, thank you for that. Deji Badmas, live for us in Lagos. At least 17 people have been killed in suspected militant attacks in northern Burkina Faso and central Mali. The attack in Burkina Faso happened on Thursday morning between the towns of Marcoye and Tokabangu. Residents were ambushed on their way to a market across the nearby border with Niger. At least 8 people died and 9 were wounded. The attack in Mali took place near Bandiagara in the central Mopti region. At least 9 people were killed and others are still missing or wounded. According to government sources, gunmen opened fire in 2 villages on Wednesday evening. The attackers then ambushed several public transport vehicles on Thursday. Attacks by militants with links to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State are common in the 2 West African countries. France has been leading a regional force to combat the spread of an Islamist insurgency in the Sahel. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will host a virtual meeting of the group of 7 leaders today. Fighting the pandemic, rebuilding the global economy and climate change will all be discussed. Italy's new Prime Minister will be a new face at the meeting, and it will be U.S. President Joe Biden's first major event with other G7 leaders since he took office. Biden will also pledge $4 billion to COVAX, a global initiative led by the World Health Organization to ensure equitable access to vaccines. So what's in this for the African continent? Let's bring in Professor X. Iraqi, a lecturer from the School of Business, University of Nairobi, joining us live via Zoom. Professor Iraqi, thank you for your time. The rich and powerful nations are the ones being accused of vaccine nationalism. And in terms of economy, each of the G7 nations is also fighting its own battles during this pandemic. Should we expect any earth-shaking outcomes from this summit?
Good afternoon. I don't think we expect anything very earth-shaking for a very simple reason. Each of these G7 countries has its own problem they are dealing with at home. You go to Britain, they have Brexit. You go to US, they have a new president. You go to Italy, they have a new prime minister. So beyond thinking about other countries and other regions like Africa, deal with domestic affairs first. But beyond that, we have to remember that the issues that G7 is dealing with need a lot of time to negotiate and reach a consensus. Climatic change, international development, healthcare like COVID and so on. So I don't think I expect anything earth-shaking from this summit.
And Professor, in the current world order, what do you see as the relevance of the G7, especially for the African continent, where China is now a major player?
That's an interesting question, because from where I sit, I think the G7 is relevant as China comes to Africa or as China's influence in Africa increases, for a very simple reason. I think as China comes to Africa, China needs a countervailing force or a counterbalance, and that counterbalance would be G7. So even if China's influence increases, we need somebody else to tell China, you are moving too fast or too slowly. You are taking too much or too little. So I think G7 is necessary to counterbalance China. But my thinking is, because Russia was removed from G7 because of reclaiming Crimea, and because of China's increasing influence in economic affairs, I think it is time China joined G7 to make G8.
All right, Professor Iraqi, thank you. Thank you, Professor Iraqi, for those insights. Professor X. Iraqi joining us live from Nairobi. Now, the United States says it's ready to talk with Iran about returning to the 2015 nuclear deal. 3 years after former President Donald Trump pulled out of the agreement, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told his European counterparts that Washington would join them in trying to return to the accord if Iran came into full compliance. It remains unclear if Tehran will accept the offer. It's been demanding sanctions be lifted first. But Washington also eased restrictions on Iranian diplomats at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency is expected to visit Tehran on Saturday, although Iran said it will bar inspectors from visiting undeclared nuclear facilities. You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a short break. Straight ahead. The World Health Organization sends Ebola vaccines to Guinea after outbreak. And experts blame climate change for extreme weather across the U.S. as food, fuel and water shortages continue in Texas.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Aden, Shiwishi, Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Bitterly cold temperatures continue to chill large parts of the U.S. The power is largely back on in Texas, but some essential supplies are running low, and the state senator Ted Cruz is facing heavy criticism for flying to Mexico for a vacation. It is Tian San has more from Dallas.
Fuel is now running short. People have to line up in gas stations for several hours, and that's because many people are now using their cars to warm up, especially in those remote areas where some of the roads are still blocked, some of the regions are still cut away from the rest of the country. And mind you, the cold weather conditions are not completely over. But one more crisis that really marked the last couple of days, and that is access to clean water. At this point, we understand roughly 13 million residents are affected one way or another. Some people have no water whatsoever. Well, the state governor, Greg Abbott himself, just spoke today, and he's essentially denying any kind of responsibility. He's holding just ERCOT responsible, and ERCOT is a nonpartisan independent organization. Its name stands for Electricity Reliability Council of Texas, and they are the ones responsible for the electricity grid. But in their defense, they were saying that essentially in the beginning of this incident, so many power generating plants, including gas plants, were impacted by these cold weather conditions, while at the same time demand for energy was going high in unprecedented levels, with so many people staying at home because of the cold, cranking up the heat and electricity. It created a situation where they said they had to create this controlled blackdown, otherwise it would cause a major crash in the system and lead to a blackout that could last for months. Not just in Texas. It's important to note that this is now the national headlines, because we're not just talking about any senator. Texas is a powerful state, and Ted Cruz is a high-profile Republican in this country. In fact, his name has been thrown around as one of the potential candidates to lead the Republican Party in the 2024 elections, you know, replacing Trump's leadership. So for such a high-level figure, I mean, there's so many mistakes here. It's not even, I couldn't even tell which one's worse. The fact that he went away on a beach holiday vacation at the height of a crisis his state is facing, the biggest crisis in its modern history, or his explanation to this trip, because he said that it was his daughters who asked to go on this trip and that he had to accompany them. But it later turns out that this really was a family vacation and he was actually intending to stay the weekend. But given the backlash, he had to return immediately in less than 24 hours.
The World Health Organization has shipped 11,000 doses of Ebola vaccines to Guinea. This is after the country's health officials reported a cluster of Ebola cases. The vaccines come at the beginning of the outbreak. The move has been hailed as a key part of a strategy to control the spread in the country. The first people to receive vaccines will be health workers because they come into contact with infected patients. Somalia is investigating if a new coronavirus variant identified in the UK and South Africa has reached the country. The Horn of Africa nation has registered rising infections and a higher fatality rate compared to the first wave. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilu has more from Mogadishu.
At this bus station, transport operators prepare to ferry commuters to their respective destinations. On Monday, the government announced a new outbreak of the coronavirus disease, imposing a mandatory use of masks in all public places. But people at this bus station don't seem to care much.
I do not wear a face mask because I do not trust that it will protect me against the disease. It will block air circulation within my body.
I don't wear it because most of the public don't wear it. I work in public transport, and if someone coughs inside the car, everybody is afraid. We ask God for protection against this disease.
The situation is different in other parts of the city, where the majority of people have taken the warning seriously. Scores have died from COVID-19 since January. The government fears rising cases could be linked to coronavirus variants reaching the country.
From now on, I will wear a face mask, clean my hands every time. I will also greet people by waving my hand, not the usual handshake that involves body contact.
I am wearing this mask to protect myself and those near me. Before, I didn't take the warning seriously and I didn't wear it. But from now on, I plan on wearing every other day.
Across all of the country's airports, incoming travelers are not required to undergo mandatory isolation. A negative certificate of a COVID-19 test from a certified laboratory is all that is required.
The second wave started early in other countries like the UK and South Africa, where the new variant was first identified. This disease came in the country from people returning from abroad because once they come back, they don't enter quarantine or stay at home, which should be mandatory.
Healthcare officials in Somalia say they expect a consignment of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine later this month. Those to receive the jabs first will be frontline healthcare workers, immigration officials, and security personnel.
The Somali government will not accept the use of any vaccine that has not received WHO certification approval. We expect the consignment of AstraZeneca vaccine that has received endorsement by countries in Europe. The target is to more than 1 million people, including frontline health workers.
The Ministry of Health says up to 5,500 people have contracted the infectious disease. The death toll stands at 172. However, there are concerns that many deaths have gone undetected at local hospitals. Patients have died exhibiting possible coronavirus symptoms but were not tested. Abdulaziz Bilu, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Egypt has announced its new plan for the resumption of schools after an extended winter break due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Class attendance will no longer be mandatory so that children can learn from home. The Ministry of Education has also cancelled final exams except for higher grades. CGTN's Adel Mahrouri has more.
After postponing midterm exams last December, the Egyptian Education Ministry said the exams will take place at the start of the new semester next week. To avoid crowding, one day has been dedicated for students from the same grade to take all their tests to minimize their presence at schools. No other grades will attend school during that day.
As a state, we cannot let students advance to the next year without proper evaluation. This is what we are trying to provide to protect our children from the COVID-19 pandemic and protect the teachers and education staff. The health minister approved the plan and promised to allocate vaccines for all employees of the education sector.
Final exams for grades 4 to 8 will be replaced with monthly evaluations. After the midterm exams, schools will resume normally. Attending classes will be optional. The Education Ministry has created educational platforms to give parents the option to keep their children at home without missing their classes.
The kids are confused, the parents are confused, and no matter how much we try, we can't deliver the information as the teacher. The TV and online content is not appealing to the kids. I get frustrated to teach the kids, but at the same time, I don't feel comfortable sending them back to school. I can't take such a health risk. They are kids. If they play, they'll forget about the safety measures. I don't know what to do.
While many parents are hesitant to send their kids back to school, some are confident that it's the best for their kids.
At school, the kids get to engage with their peers. They gain experience. There are many things they miss when they stay at home. I think the conditions are appropriate to resume schooling because the infection rates are not as high. I think there is no problem for life to gradually get back to normal.
Schools will reopen on March 10 after students spent more than 60 days at home, the longest winter break in decades. The government wants to avoid another educational gap like that of last year, so students can learn from home but still need to attend their exam days in person to pass their grade. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Let's head now to Algeria, where President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has dissolved the lower house of parliament and called early legislative elections. Addressing the nation on state television on Thursday, the president also announced a government reshuffle and ordered the release of 60 detainees. The prisoners were part of a protest movement that forced his predecessor, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, from power in 2019. Lawmakers in the now dissolved lower house had been elected for 5 years in May 2017, with Bouteflika's allies having an overwhelming majority. President Tebboune said the dissolution was part of reforms that followed amendments to the constitution in November last year. The amendments sought to give Parliament more powers.
I decided to dissolve the assembly and call for elections to build a new institution through elections that are not influenced by money, whether corrupt or not. I have heard your calls. Therefore, I have decided that within a maximum of 48 hours, there will be a government reshuffle that I will announce that will affect the sectors whom the people and the government believe are underperforming.
Children account for about 75% of trafficking victims detected in Nigeria and other parts of West Africa. That's according to a 2020 global report on human trafficking by the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports on the situation in Nigeria.
17-year-old Mercy's been a victim of human trafficking. Her full identity is concealed for her safety. She was just 14 when she was shipped to Saudi Arabia with the promise of a job, an opportunity to help her family out of abject poverty. But instead, she was sold into slavery and faced untold hardship and brutality in the hands of her masters.
And when he saw me immediately, he said, this is the kind of lady we want to, that me, I'm very young. They call me slave, that we are slave. They feel like millions of naira on her head. When he was beating me, he bring out a knife. Look at this knife, that is going to kill me with this knife. I was very scared. So at that time, anything he say I should do, I would just do.
After 3 months and a failing health, Mercy was sent out of her master's home and left to die. Though luckier than many who don't survive, she's now a shadow of her former self.
My strength is not like before. Before I can walk, but now, when I came back from sickness from another, I've been sick. My mom have been wasting money, spending money for my treatment. I cannot stay in a place that I will stay alone, like there's darkness, because if I stay there, I will start screaming.
Nigeria is a country of origin, transit and destination for traffickers. Data from the UN Office on Drug and Crime, UNODC, indicated that about 75% of victims are children.
There is a strong link between trafficking of children and the economic situation of a country and its income. The more the country is part of the low-income countries categories, the higher the share of children will be. In Nigeria, we see different forms of exploitation, and we see also an impact actually of COVID-19 on these forms.
Nigerian authorities say that they'll continue to ramp up efforts to combat human trafficking.
There's a lot of government intervention from all ministries to empower the vulnerable from the grassroots. And also, there's review and validation of the National Policy on Protection and Assistance of Trafficked Persons in Nigeria. And right now, we're coming up with a national action plan to help interventions in the areas of human trafficking.
Despite the widespread menace of human trafficking, conviction of traffickers remains low in Nigeria and West Africa. Many are calling for the strengthening of a legal framework to prosecute offenders and for more severe sentencing for those found guilty. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
It's 1:30. You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in business news. Lawyers in Ghana want public servants that willfully cause financial loss to taxpayers punished. And the International Monetary Fund calls on Nigeria to cut its oil dependence and push economic reforms.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Lawyers in Ghana want authorities to enforce a law that punishes government officials who are linked to projects that lead to financial loss for the state. The call comes after the International Court of Arbitration ordered the government to pay more than $130 million to an energy firm, Ghana Power Generation Company, for terminating an agreement to produce electricity for the country. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Ghana faced a power crisis between 2012 and 2016. While the power cuts crushed many businesses and the economy, the government struck deals with energy companies to produce electricity for the country. One such deal involved an emergency power project with Ghana Power Generation Company, signed in 2015. The agreement was cancelled in 2018, resulting in a court ordering Ghana to pay more than $130 million to the energy company. Some lawyers say the government could have avoided this through negotiations and want those responsible to be punished.
If people are culpable, take them on. Because some of these things lead to private gain, okay, and then public loss. That's why we have the law against willfully causing financial loss. If somebody acted willfully in this regard, and it has caused this country financial loss, we should take that person on.
Ghana is now producing excess power. The government said it cancelled a deal with Ghana Power Generation Company to reduce its debts in the energy sector. While some experts say the country can sell its surplus power to neighboring West African countries, others think that may not tackle the situation entirely.
We are the most expensive in the West African sub-region. And if we are the most expensive, yes, we will be able to supply to other countries, but the quantum that we would want to supply may not be that much because we are in excess, because we are expensive. Ideally, if we had a plan which is linked to industrialization, as we are building industrialization, we are consuming electricity.
Meanwhile, Ghana's debt owed to independent power producers is rising as the country struggles to pay its bills at a time when the economy is reeling under the COVID-19 pandemic. Many people are concerned that the government will have to use taxpayers' money to pay the energy companies for cancelling the deal. They want the government to consider renegotiating the deal. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
In Nigeria, the International Monetary Fund has called on the country to devise ways to ramp up its economy, beginning with cutting its oil dependence. That's the outcome of the Washington-based lender's 2020 Article 4 staff consultation to Nigeria. The review shows that the country's recovery from recession may be slow. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports from Abuja.
Nigeria has been grappling with the devastating impact of the coronavirus. Its economy has been on a decline since real GDP contracted by 3.2% in 2020, fueled by the falling oil prices and COVID-19 lockdown. The West African nation depends on crude oil for nearly 90% of its export revenue, and much of that has been cut off. Now the IMF is encouraging Nigeria to focus on economic reforms that support sustainable revenue generation. But it won't be a walk in the park for a country like Nigeria, with several factors limiting its growth.
Our institutions are different, our cultures, our environment, our realities are different. If we're a little more ingenious, the IMF will have little reason to make these recommendations to us. In the past, we have seen how they have recommended structural adjustment policy in the era of the military, and we saw how that plundered us into an economic tailspin, how our exchange rate spiraled downwards, resulting in our inability to compete very well in the international market and affecting our balance of trade overall.
In suggesting what they're suggesting, they are not putting into consideration that we have heavy security issues that we're struggling with. They are not also looking at the situation that we have a lot of nepotism going on in the country and so much corruption.
Issues like double-digit inflation and falling per capita income continue to threaten Nigeria's growth, and government's buffers haven't had significant impact on the shocks from the pandemic.
It is also worsened by the level of insecurity that has been existing in the country, which has affected virtually everything in the country. The insecurity is been worse ever that we have ever experienced, and so it's affecting agricultural production, it is affecting movements of goods and services, it's affecting movement of human beings, and so to that extent, the economy is suffering.
IMF projects that Nigeria's recovery might be very slow under the current policies. Real GDP growth in 2021 is expected to hit a positive 1.5% and recover to its pre-pandemic level only in 2022. Such policies entail huge public debt service payments that leave limited fiscal room for crucial social and infrastructural spending.
We keep hearing stories, or we keep reading reports about government trying to pay attention to some of these things, creating infrastructure fund. We see the central bank now and again releasing funds to commercial banks, to fund the agricultural sector. We see, all kinds of schemes being developed by government to fund entrepreneurs. All these are salutary, but something tells me, or like we do know, something tells me that most of the time some of these funds are diverted. The problem is the diversion. In terms of policy formulation and policy direction, we can hardly fault government.
Economic watchers say government's diversification efforts will spur economic recovery. That and strategic policy adjustment reforms which would help navigate the economic downturn towards an upward trajectory. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Kenya is optimistic of a trade deal with the United Kingdom as trade talks with another traditional ally, the United States, continue. The UK has pushed a ratification deadline to allow its House of Lords to go through the deal, while the new U.S. administration is yet to sign the trade pact negotiated with the administration of former U.S. President Donald Trump. CGTN's Robert Nagila has more.
For the United States, a key trade and security partner, tariff policy and market access are top on its agenda. Kenya, on the other hand, is eyeing a new deal with Washington before the 2025 expiry of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. AGOA grants the country and 40 other African states duty-free access to the U.S. market with more than 6,000 product lines.
We have the opportunity to strengthen our relationship with a free trade agreement.
Trade between the two countries stood at $118 million in 2019, up 4.9% from 2018. With the UK, Kenya preferred a bilateral approach because of Brexit. Nairobi's keen on securing duty-free and quota-free market access to the UK. Among Kenya's top 5 export products to the UK are coffee, tea, vegetables, flowers and fruits. The trade pact was signed in December.
Both Kenya and the United Kingdom have strong resolve to deepen their economic ties.
But the political transition from former President Donald Trump's administration to that of President Joe Biden has left the talks in limbo. The Trump administration had pushed a unilateral approach, while Biden is said to prefer a multilateral approach.
The Trump administration was quickly trying to work on to withdraw from the World Trade Organization and then begin to effect its own agreements on a bilateral basis with different countries. And that is probably going to be stopped.
And early this week, the UK Parliament requested for more time to review the trade deal with Kenya. But experts say this is normal before it is ratified.
I don't think there is actually a stumbling block. They just want assurance in terms of how this will impact on the regional cohesion in East Africa.
The consensus from Nairobi is that a lot of progress has been made in talks with both countries, but a few issues still remain. When those talks will be concluded is yet unknown. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Cote d'Ivoire lost 116,000 acres of forest in its cocoa-growing regions in 2020. According to the government, the world's top cocoa producer has lost more than 85% of its forest cover since 1960, mainly due to cocoa farming, despite industry pledges to halt deforestation. Mighty Earth, a U.S.-based environmental group, has said that the area deforested last year showed some improvement from 2015, when about 148,000 acres were being destroyed annually. Major chocolate companies and industry leaders, along with the governments of Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, pledged in 2017 to eliminate the production and sourcing of cocoa from protected forests and national parks. A major immigration overhaul in the U.S. has been unveiled by the White House. The bill shortens the path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants and more. Nathan King looks at whether the plan is likely to face an uphill battle in Congress.
Yes, with the backing of the Biden White House, Democrats on Capitol Hill unveiling an ambitious immigration bill. It's 180 degrees from the Trump White House, who of course focused on building a border wall, restricting immigration and separation of families and aggressive expulsions by immigration services. There will be some security at the border, but it's not going to be in forms of a wall, more about introducing new technologies. But really where this focus of the bill lies is a pathway to citizenship for 11 million undocumented immigrants without papers here, of course focusing on the so-called dreamers, that is undocumented people here who arrived illegally as children, also farm workers who pay taxes, of course, and others who have fled wars, and others as asylum seekers and refugees, but without papers as well. It's ambitious, but Democrats who really want to push this bill say it's important to recognize the contribution of immigrants and make them fully a choice to become American citizens. So take a listen.
Our system is broken. We have 11 million undocumented people living, working, and raising families in our communities without legal status. These are good and decent people who believe in the promise of America down to their bones. They did not come here for handouts. They came here for hard work. And that's exactly what they do each and every day.
Now, the big question is, will this pass? As you know, a very divided Capitol Hill. The Republicans won't like all this bill, but of course the Democrats have a slim majority in the House of Representatives, a 50-50 Senate with Kamala Harris, the Vice President, able to pass a casting vote. But of course there's this filibuster thing where you need 60 votes in the Senate to pass something. There's talk of reforming that. Will immigration be the straw that breaks the camel's back on this one? We don't know. Well, we know that immigration, though, has really troubled other presidents. Barack Obama found it very difficult to pass something. George W. Bush thought that he was going to get the right balance between security at the border and a pathway to citizenship. 8 senators, called the Gang of 8, really nearly came close, but that collapsed. In fact, there hasn't been significant immigration reform in the US since the 1980s, when Ronald Reagan basically gave an amnesty for about 3 million people on a pathway to citizenship. It's a divisive issue. It's going to be an ambitious goal, and it's happening within its first 100 days of the Biden presidency, showing that this is a key concern of those, despite other priorities like COVID. We'll wait and see. Nathan King, CGTN, at the White House.
The CEO of stock trading platform Robinhood has apologized to customers for how it handled the GameStop trading frenzy. Vlad Tenev testified Thursday before the House Financial Services Committee on Capitol Hill alongside other key players. Giles Gibson reports from Washington.
There was an unusual cast of characters at this hearing who were all brought together by the GameStop trading frenzy. You had the CEO of Melvin Capital, a hedge fund that took heavy losses because it was shorting or betting against GameStop before its stock price surged in January. You also had Keith Gill, who's known as Roaring Kitty online, and another username that I'm not allowed to say on television, who played a really big role in boosting the popularity of GameStop on social media. And most importantly, you also had the CEO of the stock trading app Robinhood, who issued an apology to his customers.
I'm not going to say that Robinhood did everything perfect and that we haven't made mistakes in the past. But what I commit to is making sure that we improve from this, we learn from it, and we don't make the same mistakes in the future.
Now, Robinhood has faced accusations of favouring Wall Street over kitchen table investors because of its decision to suspend purchases of GameStop stock right at the height of the trading frenzy. The video game retailer's stock price is currently down at around $40 after hitting almost $350 per share back in January. And we're also seeing hedge funds actually scraping data from Reddit and other social media sites to try to spot the next GameStop. Giles Gibson for CGTN in Washington.
You're watching Africa Live. We've got plenty more coming up, including this. Serving it hot when Nigerians love red hot pepper in their food.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's go to Nigeria, where pepper is a staple ingredient in most local dishes. From rice meals to soups and stews, the spicy feel of pepper appeals to many across the nation. And locals say it is one way of burning calories and resolving other health issues. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam takes us through the experience of a Nigerian hot pepper meal.
Red, hot, and sizzling in the pot. That's the famous stew from western Nigeria. Pepper is a major ingredient in this dish, as with most Nigerian local cuisines. And this kitchen in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, makes sure to treat their customers to a delight of peppery meals.
Some customers do come, they will say, I want the hottest pepper. And there are some that will say they want it moderate. And into that all is because of pepper that they used to come to eat.
Enjoy my food without pepper though. It becomes tasteless without pepper. No, it gives it the flavor, the taste. That was my love for pepper.
Pepper was used as a food preservative in warm climates like Nigeria. This staple ingredient is very accessible and affordable too. There's quite a variety of pepper in Nigeria, from the mild to the extremely hot. And depending on the dish and desired spice, more than one type can be combined. Besides the taste, many believe the health benefits are enormous.
That pepper, the food is nothing. You just see the food as if you are just giving them a poison. Because if you eat with pepper, all your system will open. your sister will open both the throat, the hair, the nose, everything. You will not feel as if you want to throw away the food.
When you are growing up, without even taking pepper, you have dull brain. But when you started taking that pepper, you build up with your brain will be sharp. So we can't everything about Nigerian that we love pepper. And that is why we are sharp in Nigeria.
Nigerian pepper isn't for the faint-hearted, but for those brave enough to allow their taste buds to be ignited by the fiery sensation of a peppery meal. And that could either be a delightful experience or it could send a grown man tearing like a child. But for many Nigerians, a meal is incomplete without pepper. Bon appetit.
And coming up in sports, Uganda's games at the ongoing 2021 FIBA AfroBasket qualifiers postponed due to positive COVID-19 tests in their delegations.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
We begin with basketball news. Uganda's second leg games at the FIBA